Hey guys, welcome to this tutorial on Twixtor for Final Cut Pro 10. I'm using computer game footage as you know, Battlefield 3 is such a big thing on YouTube, everyone's wanting a piece of the pie. So using Twixtor you can get really nice effects, but um, with variable frame rates and the way you record using fraps or dxstory, you can sometimes get duplicate frames. The problem with duplicate frames is Twixtor estimates what's happening in between your frames. So, for example, if you've recorded at 30 frames per second um, and you get any duplicates, Twixtor's going to try and draw a timeline in between these two frames, and if it's duplicates it's not got anywhere to go, so it just creates a kind of slow down, speed up, slow down, speed up in between the sequential frames and the duplicate frames. And this happens quite regularly, so you want to optimize your game, more importantly, so that your frame rate is high and it's steady, and that you know that when you've got fraps running or whatever are using to record, that you're getting a full 30 frames a second. If you can do higher and do 60 frames a second, then your Twixtor is going to be fantastic. I only do it sometimes, but generally 30 frames a second or 29.97 works perfect for me. And it's solving any problem. 60 can be a little tricky if a lot of things are going on at the one time. So first of all, this is going to be an example of applying Twixtor to footage with duplicate frames in it. You can see this sort of stuttering of that plane there. It's kind of jerking and it's speeding up and it's slowing down, and it generally looks a bit rubbish. So the problem with that is there's a duplicate frame every so often, so it's slowing down too much on these ones and then speeding up through the other ones that are there. And it just doesn't look very nice at all. And I see an abundance of people accepting this as the way things are on their videos, and I hate it. I hate seeing it. Some really creative videos out there, and it's ruined by bad Twixtor applications. So what you can do, and I know in After Effects it's a lot easier to get rid of duplicate frames, but for some reason in Final Cut Pro 10 they have not included it. So I'm not going to go through how to cut them out. That's a whole other tutorial. I'm just going to assume that you've got some decent footage. I'll show you how to check it, but we'll get on with the actual application of Twixtor. So I'll go back to some other footage that I've got here now. I've already sort of tinkered around with this. I'll show you the process, but the reason for it is it takes so long to render that I would rather just get it done as quick as possible for you. So here is my chopper footage. I'll grab that and drop it in. Now I've only took a small section there, as you can see. It's only about 2 seconds long, so if I play that really quick, that's a wee bit longer than 2 seconds, maybe 3-4 seconds. So I don't need that much, so we just cut that down. So there's about 2 seconds worth. Right, we're going to make this last for quite a bit. Now, important, if I apply Twixtor at this point to this footage, Twixtor itself doesn't retime this and stretch this out. So you're only going to be getting 2 seconds worth of slow motion footage. So you obviously want to turn this 2-second footage into something much bigger. So you go up to your generators here, click that, click on solids here, just grab any one of these, just grab the black one, drop that in at its back. If you want it to be particularly longer, shorter, whatever, then adjust this solid one, select the two, right click, new compound clip, name it whatever you like, just leave it as that, is what I do. That makes those two clips now one. As you can see, there's a solid bit and there's the video bit. So when I go to video effects, revision effects, and Twixtor, drop that in, Now this does take a while to render all of this out. So in the information panel of the video, it's now applied Twixtor. So what I want to do is I want to create this to be 5% the original speed. So that's going to use up all of this. So if I put the pointer there, you can see that I've now got footage in this area, which it was previously just the solid gradient. So change that to 5 or 1 or whatever speed that you want to have it. Track quality is always on best, leave that on best. Motion sensitivity, you want that cranked up to full, 100. Image prep, now this works well for things that are have got a lot of background behind them, and it's trying to move past, because your other option is contrast and edge enhancement, which obviously it just beefs up the edging and tries to make the moving object pop a wee bit more. I don't technically need it here because I'm against a light background with a dark object, so that's fine. I'll put it on anyway, it won't do any harm. You can see it actually changes the image quality a slightly wee bit. It digs in on the lighter and makes them pop out a wee bit more. You've got your frame interpretation, which this is something subjectable. You need to kind of play around with this. Sometimes blend works better, and sometimes motion weighted blend works better. I tend to use motion weighted more than anything else. You've got nearest, and I've found that doesn't work very well at all. So motion weighted blend it is. Smart blend is something that you can play around with as well. I only really use it on shots that are panning, or the background's moving in and out of the screen, or objects are moving in and out of the screen. I'll put it on even though I've not got objects coming in and out of this footage, but I do have the tail of the chopper out the top. So anything that's panning in or out or entering in or out of the screen, left, right, up or down, you want to have Smart Blend on, because it judges the ins and outs much better. So I've set this up exactly like one of these other footage pieces of footage here. So just to save waiting for this to render, I'll just play that, and there you go, nice smooth 5% footage. Now you may notice along the tail section of that chopper out the top of the screen, we're getting a lot of ghosting. You can see that right there. Now that's something that's going to be unavoidable. I think that it's because the rotation of that chopper is quite fast for this footage. Now, as a result, having this center section looking fantastic is a great result at the speed of this clip. I mean, this span round within a second to the opposite side. So to actually have this moving nice and smoothly is an achievement, and I'd say that's a success. So what personally I would do here, and on my other channel that I actually produce these videos for, I tend to put a letterbox effect on these anyway. So that would allow me to get rid of this tail section by putting black bands in, like, where are they? I've got it here somewhere, there we go. So yeah, I've cut that entire tail section out, and what that does is it changes the perspective of things. There's things that you wouldn't have noticed before. The lighting effect underneath the nose of that chopper, the slight glow here, it's a really nice fade in and out as that gunner's shooting his gun there. But you don't tend to notice it as much on this clip here, just because there's so much more going on. And on Twixtor, you want a nice, when it's something slow, you want something to pop out. You want to have a main event kind of thing going on, and not too much stuff. So by putting them in, I find you get a much more cinematic feel. So that works. These settings work. I could slow this down even more and it would work just fine. And as you can see, I've not got any of that stuttering. There's no start, there's no stop, there's no strange bits. And the way to check that is, this is the footage I took. So going to the start of that, just use your arrow keys and just click once to the right. If it moves, then it's a new frame. If you keep going, as you can see, every time I click, we've got a new frame. So as you can see, if I slowed that down without using Twixtor, look how much it jumps per frame. I mean, we've not got a lot of frames here before it actually turns a full 180 and we can see the side of the chopper. But when we've applied the Twixtor to it, you know, if I do that frame by frame, look at the small movements, and then that's me getting to like another frame there. We've got loads and loads of other, you know, new frames in between. It gives us such a perfect effect for, you know, faking that kind of high FPS camera thing. It gives a really nice effect. So that's the way to check if you've got duplicate frames. If you click through and two of these frames are the same, then you've got a duplicate frame. You want to delete that frame because Twixtor will jump on that, guaranteed. So be mindful of that. Check all your footage before you use it. Or if you're just firing things in, rendering them to see how they look, and you're getting the start and stop, go back to your main media here that you've used and find duplicate frames and pull them out if you have to. What I've found is by optimizing my actual game, I end up with, you know, more satisfying results. Whereas I've got much more complex things happening, really fast objects, like this in particular, this jet here. I mean, look, I've got this running real smooth from the top to the bottom here. Now, we do get problems with this one because there's crossover, there's background objects, there's so much going on that Twixtor can only handle so much, but the effect is still awesome, you know, and I'm not going to complain at that. But I mean, that plane is moving at one hell of a speed, so if I show you the real footage here, you'll see how quick it is, and we've not got a lot of frames to actually paint. So if I do that frame by frame, you can see how much that jumps. Not a lot of frames to be dealing with, as well as that plane is turning. So anything that seems to rotate, if it rotates really fast, Twixtor has a problem with it. So when I've applied Twixtor to that, we're getting ultra smooth gradients. Apart from the bullets that are coming out of the chopper and the jet, you know, they're moving far too fast, and even at 60 frames a second, I'm having problems with that. But you know what? I'm happy with that. You know, my main objects here are the chopper and the jet, so I'm not really going to complain. Now you can see some ghost in there, and that's the simple explanation for that. You know, you've got a grey jet and a grey plane, very similar colours. You've also got grey smoke behind it and the bright flame from that tower. But when it gets to a point where Twixtor's sort of deciding what's next, we get this ghosting effect because it's sort of misjudging something. You can play around with your settings, but some things just won't work ideally. And this one in particular, when it's crossing the rotor blades of that chopper, it's not going to work because there's too much distortion in, you know, in front of it, that it's just not going to pull it out correctly. So I would just have to edit this in a way where I don't get to see that, or I would just have to live with it. It isn't that bad, and it only happens for one frame. So I mean, even that bit, it's, you can see on the left wing of the plane to the, you know, the right side of the screen, it starts to judder a wee bit there. But you know, generally the rest of the jet looks lovely. Can't complain too much at that. You get a wee bit of smoke on the you know, the smokestack at the back there. It alters again, but again, that's just grey on grey, similar shades of the spectrum. It's just going to mix them up. But again, generally, excellent result there. Can't complain too much. I mean, that's a very, very fast one, lots of stuff going on, so, you know, can't complain. Finally, what you can do for your Twixtor is, what I'll do is I'll reset these settings for you. If you want your video to start at a normal speed, or start at a slow speed and then speed up to normal, or vice versa, whatever you want to do, you can do that, and it's just about using keyframes. If you don't know how to do this with Final Cut Pro, then you want to learn this. It applies to every changeable attribute of any filter that you've got in your Final Cut library. And it's so easy to use that there's no excuse that you don't know how to do it. So what to do is you go to the start of the clip where it's at 100%. Now I want this to start at 100% and slow down. So what I would do is I would go forward to the point I want it to start slowing down. So let's say about there, and come up here to the speed percent. The little diamond, click that, make that go orange. So that means we've got a keyframe where it stays to 100. Now, what I want to do is just use my arrow key to the right, keep tapping that up, or to the right rather, to a point where I want it to be my new speed. So I'll say I'm happy about there. Click another keyframe, and then type in whatever you want the speed to end up being at this keyframe. So I'm going 5% again. So what happens is, if I go through, say from the start of this, where it's 100% here, if you watch this little section here, as I advance through the frames, that's my keyframe there. And on my way to the next keyframe where I set it to 5%, you can see it gradually going down. So what that does is it's ramping down to 5%. So you get that kind of speed in, normal speed to 5%, then it locks at 5%. And then you can do that the opposite way around just by adding a keyframe here, skipping forward again, adding another one, putting it to 100%, and that gives you that ramp instead of it being normal speed and then all of a sudden 5%. And in the words of Blue Peter, here's one I made earlier. So this one starts at normal speed, which is really quite quick, and then it ramps down to 5%. So there you go. So you're getting that really nice smooth gradient into it. You don't get that kind of choppiness or weird rubbishy look to it. So it's all normal speed up till about here. Then my keyframe's activated and it's ramping down and down and down till it locks in 5%. And generally with a lot of footage, especially when the camera's not moving, you really notice this more. So yeah, I really like that effect. That's something I've not done a lot of, but I'm going to start integrating it into my other videos. You can check out my other videos actually on another channel. I'll put the link in the description and you can check them out. But there is some of it where I did have duplicate frames and whatnot. I just left them in because one, they weren't that bad, and two, the shot I got was awesome and I just want to use it anyway. So I'm trying to be a wee bit more strict now and just use the best of the best. These kind of shots where it just looks perfect and, you know, Twixtor's working to its best effect. So now once you've applied Twixtor to your clip, it's all rendered and it's finished. If you realise that maybe you've got too much space, like in this one I've added too much time, I've got that section there. I'll show you this, if I want to retime that down to say this end part here, I'll drag that down, and it's, as you can see, it has to re-render the entire thing, which takes so much time. Now this is just a tip to change that, is right click that clip, select new compound clip again, and now the footage is hidden in behind this sort of compound clip, which is a separate thing. So this is in your timeline, you can grab that, move that about, and more importantly, you can retime it. without it having to render again, because it doesn't affect the actual footage inside. The footage is still here. You can just see that the back side of this is actually greyed out. So yeah, you can edit that. That's an important point for, you know, you've waited for your render to happen. It eventually finishes, but you need to trim that clip down. And instead of trimming it down, letting it render, realizing it needs to be a tiny bit shorter or longer, and doing it again and having to re-render. So you always, once you're finished doing your Twixtor on your clip, make it a new compound clip, and then that allows you to edit it without having to render again. So you're kind of finished with your Twixtor, and it's now just down to the fun stuff of editing your video. So always remember that one. As I say, I'm recording everything at 1080p, which is progressive. I record on DX Story or Fraps or Afterburner at 29.97 frames per second. So if you want to, you know, record your footage like that exactly as I am doing, that might cut down on some of the problems you're having. And then obviously set up the project in when you make a new project for 29.97 frames per second progressive, and you won't have a problem. If you run into any other problems, you can let me know in the comments. I'll try and work things out, but you know, watch the tutorial a few times, take it all in. It is tricky, but you need to start just tinkering about with you know, Twixtor and Final Cut and whatever games, and you need to make sure you've got a nice steady frame rate. That's the most important thing. If you've got duplicate frames in there and it's stuttering around, that's your problem. You will, if there's sometimes really fast moving things, even at 30 frames per second, where you don't have duplicate frames, sometimes Twixtor does stutter, but it's not the same. It doesn't stop and start. It's just a kind of notch by notch in between the frames. It's just not doing it perfect. It's just not the best footage for it. So sometimes it happens without duplicate frames, but it's generally only because something's moving really fast, and Twixtor just can't keep up. If you do have duplicate frames, you're definitely going to have this problem. So, you know, get all that stuff sorted out, and Twixtor's going to be your best friend. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe, do your usual thing. Check out the other channel where the full video clips are, and yeah, hope you enjoyed. Thanks guys.